Manager with the Office of Domestic Violence Strategies. We're an office within the City of Philadelphia's Health and Human Services that helps coordinate the city's response to intimate partner violence. And we're really glad today to host this webinar about the Domestic Violence Hotline. And this is a great opportunity for professionals to learn about how the hotline works from the professionals that are behind the hotline. So I'm going to turn it over to our first presenters, Michaela Dubois and Scott Sprunger. Michaela is a community educator at Women in Transition, and Scott is a community educator at Lutheran Settlement House. So thank you so much for being here today. You'll get to hear from our other presenters later on, and we hope that this is a very helpful and engaging session.
Hi, welcome everybody. So glad to have you here with us on this rainy day in Philly, where I can think of nothing better to do than think together about how we can best support survivors in their journey for freedom and safety. And in doing so, I'm really glad to join Michaela here and show you a little bit about the hotline, whether you've used it before or this is something that you want to know more about before you feel comfortable recommending it to others. You're in the right place. We're really going to kind of walk you through how you can get the most out of the hotline, and how to connect people to the various resources that folks can get plugged into through the hotline. So let me share my slides with you. Can folks see my screen? Cool, great. Michaela, do you want to say any introductory words before we hop in?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say thank you for joining, and really looking forward to talking about what exactly to expect and kind of making maybe this resource more accessible for folks. So yeah, thank you for joining.
So before we hop into things too deeply, we kind of want to hear from you first. I'm going to invite you to either with the device, scan this QR code. It'll take you to a little questionnaire. Or if you're on your computer and that's easier, you can go to menti.com and type in the code 1903 1990. So I'm going to give you just a second to pull up your device, scan the screen, go there on your computer. The question we have for you is, how do you feel about calling the domestic violence hotline? What kinds of words come to mind for you when you think about connecting folks to the hotline? And we'll just take a look at some of those responses as they're coming through. I'm seeing anxious, comfortable, unsure is a really big one. A lot of folks are doing that. Hopeful as well. Apprehensive, safety. Give you a few more moments to take a moment, just check in with yourself. What goes through your mind when you think about connecting folks to the hotline? Seeing anxious, comfortable, full beds, scared and worried, absolutely. Uncertainty. Yeah. It feels like I'm noticing some themes here of on one hand feeling a little apprehensive, a little uncertain about how to go about connecting with the hotline, but also some feelings of maybe hopefulness or just the possibility of creating some safety and some options. And I think that's in many ways reflects how a lot of survivors feel when they're calling the hotline. So thank you for sharing this with us. We're gonna do this very same check-in at the very end of today's presentation. It'll be interesting to see, what changes there are, if any.
Yeah. Alrighty. Thank you for participating in our Menti check-in today. We first want to kind of go over who actually is behind the Philadelphia Domestic Violence Hotline. And the answer is all four domestic violence agencies in Philadelphia. So they're here listed on the screen. There's Women Against Abuse, Lutheran Settlement House, Congreso de Latinos Unidos, and Women in Transition. So staff and folks from all four of these agencies are the folks behind the phone and answering the hotline for folks who call. And we will go through in the next few slides exactly what services we all offer. So to start with Women Against Abuse and Women in Transition. So firstly, Women Against Abuse offers legal services and also runs the safe havens. And we'll hear from folks from all four agencies in the panel. So they'll be represented here today as well. But Women Against Abuse runs the domestic violence safe havens in Philadelphia, and then also has a legal center that offers things like free attorney representation for PFAs, custody hearings, those kinds of matters. They offer court advocacy, both over the phone and in person. So this telephone outreach program, if it's more accessible to get help over the phone, they can offer that as well. And they also have a fast track attorney program that allows folks who are high risk and in need immediately to get the help that they need in a timely manner. They also provide community education and prevention offerings to folks in Philadelphia. So Women in Transition here on the right happens to be the agency that I'm from, but we offer one-on-one counseling and virtual peer support groups for folks who experience domestic violence and or looking for help with substance use. So that's the third bullet here. And I'm the community educator. We also offer community education and prevention programs. Alrighty. So the organizations on this slide are larger community organizations that offer different services other than domestic violence services, so they're here together. Congreso offers one-on-one counseling, support groups, emergency relocation and housing assistance, and other resource referrals. They do have youth services available for folks 4 to 17. And like I said, they're a larger community organization offering help in a bunch of sectors like education, employment and training, health and safety, housing, and family and parenting. All of their services are also offered in both English and Spanish for folks who may need those services. And then we have Lutheran Settlement House. Lastly here, they offer one-on-one counseling in English, Spanish, and Mandarin Chinese. They have a children's counseling program for children 15 to 18 years old. They also offer support groups. They have medical advocacy in the form of domestic violence advocates stationed at different clinics, hospitals, things in Philadelphia if folks need that support on site. They also offer community education and prevention. And their larger organization offerings have things like food access services, homeless services, education, and then programs for older adults 55 and up. So all of this information, that was a lot, is on, I pulled mostly from website and experience. So if you want more information about these resources too, that's also available. Okay. Alrighty. And then who is the hotline for, right? We want to emphasize that the hotline is available to any person impacted by domestic violence who needs support. So that could look like survivors of domestic violence. That could look like folks who feel something is not right and maybe feel unsafe in their relationship, but maybe don't identify as a survivor of domestic violence. We get calls from caretakers of survivors looking for questions and advice on how to support survivors in their life. That also extends to providers and professionals like you all in Health and Human Services, and anyone concerned about a loved one's relationship, that is looking for um, on resources on how to support someone in their life. So it's open to anyone who is looking for support, whether that's to support themselves or support another person in their life.
So what happens when you call the hotline? Um, I'll get into this in a little bit more detail later, but in most counties in Pennsylvania, they've got one domestic violence agency for the county. Sometimes in the really rural counties, they have one agency for a couple of counties. And in Philadelphia, being such a large city, we are fortunate to have four wonderful organizations that work together as domestic violence agencies to really make sure that we are providing the best support possible to survivors in this city. We're just a large population center compared to the rest of the state. So it really takes more than one agency to make this happen. There was a time when each of our own agencies had their own hotline number, and believe it or not. And at a certain point, we realized this was not efficient or effective, that we're much stronger together. And so we kind of came together, created the Philadelphia Domestic Violence Hotline, and all four of our agencies answer that same hotline. So let me just kind of walk you through the process of what to expect when you're calling. For one thing, once you place that call, it could be sent to any of our four agencies, kind of depending on the time of day and the time of week. That we have a staffing schedule so that we make sure that it's always available 24/7, 365 days a year. But just something that is really helpful to know is that when you call and you talk to somebody, that person that you're talking to is going to be helping you as a hotline counselor. And that person might be in one organization. And if you call back 2 minutes later, you might talk to a hotline counselor in a different organization. And we really strive to offer really excellent, compassionate service. But one thing that can be helpful for folks to know is that even if you call the hotline right back, you might be talking to somebody not only completely different, but at a completely different organization. So that can kind of be helpful for folks as you think about getting in touch with the hotline, that you might have to kind of expect to potentially repeat yourself or just share a little bit of your story. Might not necessarily be able to depend on the same person answering over and over again. So just being aware that all four of our organizations answer this hotline. And once you do, that hotline counselor is going to pick up, and the first thing they're going to want to do is really just listen to understand. We know that there are as many different experiences with survivorship as there are survivors out there, that no two people's story are the same. And so it's really important to us to make sure that we're listening and we're understanding, what are your goals, what are your priorities, what are you hoping to get out of this call, and what do you want for your life in the next steps. So we're really, just to start off the conversation, gonna want to hear more about you, about what you've experienced, and about what you're looking for. So we'll listen. We'll listen to, if you just want to process some feelings, that the hotline's a great place to do that. We can just offer some support and affirmation. That sometimes survivors really are so isolated, they feel like they're alone and nobody's on their side. And calling the hotline is just, you can just get a little bit of a reminder that there really is support out there. There are people who care about you, and you can talk to them 24 hours a day. We'll also be kind of listening for your level of safety and maybe asking some questions about your safety, because we really want you to be safe, or the person that you're supporting, who's a survivor, we want them to be safe. So we might do a little bit of trying to understand what your level of safety is and what your safety needs are, understanding your priorities, and kind of setting some goals. What would you like to see happen next? Step 3, support. So after the hotline counselor has kind of um, built a relationship with the caller, kind of understands what their needs and goals are a little bit more, they want to offer um, uh, a range of potential interventions aimed at supporting and empowering the survivor to be able to take the next step on their healing journey, which can look like so many different things. Folks can call the hotline when they have just left a relationship. They could call the hotline if they're thinking about leaving and they're not sure. Sometimes folks call the hotline when they've left months ago and they still need support around that. So no matter where you are in your healing journey, hotline counselors are prepared to support you in kind of whatever stage you are in your journey. We'll offer some empowering counseling if you needed, some crisis intervention if the situation calls for it. Sometimes, people call the hotline just because they're feeling really overwhelmed, and that's a great use of the hotline. We can use some calming, self-regulating techniques with you and just kind of focus on getting clear about what next steps are. Safety planning is a huge thing, something that we do with every single caller to the hotline. No matter what situation a survivor is in, what their goals are, whether they want to leave the relationship or stay in the relationship, there are steps that can be taken to increase safety and independence. And so we'll work with the survivor wherever they are in their journey to just make sure that they are tapping into all of their resources and um, just planning around what will help them to be safer in the coming days and weeks. We can also provide general information around things like where and how do you get a protection from abuse order, for instance, or how do you get in touch with the Office of Homeless Services. If it gets any deeper than some of that, we might direct you to like a qualified expert, like a legal center, such as the Women Against Abuse Legal Center or other ones, because we really want to make sure that in addition to general information, you are getting really a competent, high-level support from professionals in that field. So if there's something that we don't know, we can connect you to somebody who does. We also want to reflect just the strengths and values that the survivor has. Oftentimes, when survivors are calling the hotline, they may be in a position of really feeling deflated or discouraged. And sometimes it is just really powerful to have somebody hold up a mirror to you and just say, hey, I really see that you are persisting a lot when the odds are stacked against you. And I want you to know I see how much strength that takes. And help just navigating systems in general. We know that survivors interact with so many different systems and that those can be complicated to navigate. And the hotline is a great resource for just having another person in your corner who can kind of help you navigate the various systems that you might be coming into contact with. And finally, we want to make sure that we get callers connected to as many forms of support and resources as possible. Sometimes that looks like getting folks connected to our organizations for counseling and kind of long-term support. Sometimes it really is like a caller has a very specific goal in mind. They want to get into a shelter tonight, or they want to speak to a legal expert today. And that's great. All of those goals are great, and we want to support you as much as possible. We will on the hotline connect you with and are able to make referrals to resources not just within the domestic violence realm, but we know that domestic violence intersects with so many other kind of personal and social issues, and we know that there's support out there for many of those as well. So we want to connect you to as many supports as you can. Again, survivors often feel kind of isolated, and we really want to widen that circle of support. Remind people that they do have more folks in their corner than it might feel like in the moment. And getting connected to resources can be a great way to do that. Now, something that's really important to understand about the domestic violence hotline is that survivors can expect a very high degree of confidentiality. They can expect that nothing that they share with the hotline counselor will be shared with another party unless we really have the explicit permission from that caller. I do want to flag there's one major exception to this, and you might have already guessed it, which is that hotline counselors are mandated reporters for child abuse and neglect. So we disclose that very early in the conversation. If somebody calls the hotline, we want to make sure that they have the fully informed about the options available to them. But the one area where survivors or callers cannot expect complete confidentiality is if we have to make a child line report, which we will of course do. But other than that, we will not share any information that a survivor discloses while they call the hotline with a third party, unless they have given us permission to do so. We take that really, really seriously. And the reason is that's a part of keeping callers safe. One kind of barrier that many survivors face when they're trying to get connected to support is knowing that when they disclose, they don't know how many people are going to find out. How's that information going to be stored? Will it be shared with any third parties? And that in and of itself can become a major barrier. And we want folks to really feel like they can have complete trust in us, that what they share, we are going to keep confidential, and their information, whatever they want to share, is fully in their hands. Also, callers have, we might ask certain questions like, what's your name, or what is your zip code? Other kinds of demographic things that helps us as far as just keeping track of like who's calling and how we can make sure that our services are accessible to as many folks as possible. Um, and callers have a right not to share any information they don't want to share with us. So somebody can call the hotline and get full support and counseling and referrals without even sharing their name. And that's totally okay if that's what helps that person to be able to show up. Now, I want to especially highlight one program in particular, which is that Women Against Abuse runs the only 2 domestic violence shelters in the city of Philadelphia. And I want to really highlight this because this is what many people call the hotline about. It is the kind a resource that a lot of folks kind of want to get connected to when they call the hotline. And so want to zoom in on this to help folks kind of understand what to expect when trying to get into a safe haven. For one thing, the locations of those safe haven shelters are confidential. I've been answering the hotline for 3 years now, and I still have no clue where they are. It's not really my business to know either. When somebody gets accepted into one of the safe havens, then they'll be informed of where the location is. But again, this is another measure that we take to really protect survivors and their right to confidentiality. And you can imagine, especially if fleeing a really dangerous relationship, having a confidential location where you're staying can be really, really important for your safety. And these safe havens, put together, they have 200 beds total, which, if you think about it, for a city of about 1.5 million people, is really not that many. It is, for that reason, folks who, well, I'll say it this way, the availability within the shelter changes day by day. Folks go into the safe havens, they leave the safe havens when their time is up. So every single day, the availability of space is different. So sometimes folks might call the hotline only to find out that the safe haven is full, and they won't be able to accept any new folks today. And we know that this can feel really discouraging, but what we want to encourage callers to do is to continue to call back, call that hotline number on every day that they are ready to make that move again. So maybe it's not the next day, maybe it'll be the next week, but on the day when that particular survivor is ready to make that move to the safe haven, we recommend calling back, even if it was full before. There might be more availability today, and we would love to explore that with you. And of course, if it is full or there's not availability for a caller, that's not the end of the conversation either. We'll start exploring what are the other options. Maybe there's an OHS shelter that you could go to in the meantime. Maybe we could brainstorm about a family or friend who you could stay with in the short term. Maybe we could reach out to one of the county shelters further out in the state if you would like to relocate, if Philadelphia doesn't feel safe. So we're going to explore options with the caller, even if the safe haven isn't available on the day that they happen to call. So the safe haven, by the way, is open to families. It's open to folks of all genders. It's not restricted on the basis of gender. It has security on site 24 hours a day because, again, safety of survivors is really, really important, as well as case management, prepared meals. It's really meant to be kind of an environment where some of the mental load is taken off of the survivor and they can kind of focus on what are the next steps. And the way to get connected to the safe haven is by calling the hotline. So what that process will look like is you might call the hotline. It could go to any one of our 4 organizations. If it goes to Women Against Abuse, they'll start that application and intake process with you and be able to go all the way through it. But say you talk to me at Lutheran Settlement House. What I'll do is I will kind of do a initial part of the application with you, which includes a sort of safety assessment of what is your level of safety right now. And I will get some basic information from you and send it over to Women Against Abuse, and their intake counselors will give a secondary call to the survivor to complete that application process. So most of the time you can expect for the safe haven application process to include 2 calls, one where you call the hotline and another one where Women Against Abuse calls you back and finishes that application process. Some tips and tricks so that you can really get the most out of the hotline. Things to know is that you really, for one thing, you can't call back too much. We are available 24/7. I think a lot of time survivors kind of have the sense of like, oh, I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to call too much or access this resource too much. And we really want people to know that we are here for you 24/7. Circumstances can change really quickly. And as they do, the hotline is available for you. So please keep calling back, especially as your circumstances change, or if the resources that you're looking at kind of fell through, and you want some more ideas or referrals, please continue to contact us. Another thing to know is that live language interpretation is available. We partner with a language line who can offer translators in a variety of languages. If somebody is calling and has very little English, they could just kind of call the line and say what language they want an interpreter for, and the hotline counselor will put them on hold momentarily and get an interpreter and connect the conversation and continue from there. Just another reminder that when you call the hotline, you might speak to folks from different agencies. So just keep that in mind. If you shared something with me at Lutheran Settlement House, and then the next time you call, you talk to Michaela, you might have to repeat some of the stuff that you told me, just to bring Michaela up to speed. And another thing to know is that every county in Pennsylvania has its own domestic violence hotline. And so we're talking about the Philadelphia hotline here, but there's one for Delco, there's one for Montgomery County, there's one for Bucks, for all the rest of the state. And so sometimes it's helpful for people, especially if they're looking for a resource outside of the city, if they don't feel safe in the city and they want to relocate. Sometimes we'll recommend calling the hotline for the county that they are trying to go to see if we can get them into shelter or get them connected to other services. And with that, we kind of want to introduce you to some more hotline counselors who can kind of share personally from some of their own experiences.
Yeah. So our panelists, to kind of transition to that portion, I wonder if we have one person from each agency here in Philadelphia. We have Irene, Ramona, Arlene, and Olivia. I was wondering if you all could maybe take a minute to quickly just introduce yourself, your role, and then how long you've been working in DV advocacy before we get to the questions. Do we want, yeah, I see people unmuting. Do we want to start? I'm just looking at my screen. Do we want to start with Irene?
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and for your interest in our Philadelphia Domestic Violence Hotline. I am Irene Lindsay Brantley. I am the program director at Women in Transition. I am one of the few people, when Scott was talking about when we had our own hotline, well, I was here when we each had our own hotline. It was 2005 that we put together this Philadelphia Domestic Violence Hotline. So I'm glad to see it grow, glad to see the interest in this topic, and pass it to, you want me to popcorn?
Sure, go ahead.
Ramona?
Thank you, Irene. Hi, everybody. My name is Ramona Peralta. I work for Congreso de Latinos Unidos, and I have been doing this work for about 18 years now, working with survivors of domestic violence, and I answered the hotline for years, on and off. I'm gonna popcorn to Olivia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Olivia Tedorin. I am the program director at Lutheran Settlement House's bilingual domestic violence program. I've also been a certified DV advocate for 18 years now. I've had various roles in this work. I'm a program director, but I actually started as a children's case manager at the Safe Haven and then a counseling supervisor where I helped cover the hotline for about 5 years. And I'm going to popcorn to Arlene.
Thank you, Olivia. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arlene Malcolm Bell, and I'm the Senior Director of Residential Services at Women Against Abuse. And I have been working in the field of advocacy since 2010. And I do not answer the hotline. And I think that's it. Back to Scott.
I think we might have lost Michaela.
Yeah, Michaela had a problem earlier.
Oh, no.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry about that. While we wait for her to rejoin us, I'm wondering if you would be willing to share what is something that you do to kind of regulate yourself either while you're on the hotline or afterwards, to just kind of uh, for self-care or just in the moment. We know that on the hotline there can be all kinds of potential crises. How do you take care of yourself as you answer it?
I can maybe get started. I think Lutheran Settlement House, we're cross-trained. So we all get the really, I think, a great privilege to be able to run the hotline. In this role, I probably maybe only run it once every 6 months or as needed. But I think one of the things that I do to prepare for the hotline is it really is about teamwork. And so if I get a really, our policy and something I like to do is if I get a really hard call, I will either flag somebody in the moment or make sure I am debriefing. So there is support in-house within Lutheran Settlement House. Also, we tend to maybe get the same caller again. And so sometimes we'll also reach out to the sister agencies to say, guys, we got this really tough call. Here's the quick background. They might call back and this might be some of the issues. Here's what we've worked with. So we try to really, from a trauma-informed sense, we try to give each of our partners a heads up. And also, it's really helpful for the survivor, too. So I think those are some of the ways that we like to encourage people on the hotline to do it. And personally, when I do it, so it's not as much anymore, but when I do that, it's still what I lean into.
Can say that I don't answer the hotline. Haven't answered the hotline in a while, but one of the things that we do, similar to Olivia, I think it comes to teamwork and making sure that the staff answering the hotline gets the support from all of us. So calling someone if there is a difficult call, debriefing afterwards, or finding resources if the hotline advocate is running out of resources or might have a question, having someone nearby that they can tap into, make sure that they offer the callers the necessary support that they need.
Great, thanks, y'all. And one question that came in from folks that I would love to kick to you very briefly is, would we ever call 911 on the hotline, or what does that look like in terms of confidentiality, but also if folks want emergency services? Well, just walk me through that a little bit.
I can get started. We called the police about a month ago. Confidentiality for us still stands, even when we have to call 911 or medical personnel. We do try to remove barriers as much as possible. And so we ask over the phone. We try to have what we call a witness, so another certified advocate there. So usually that's a supervisor, or again, we're such a small office with so many people, so we tend to just call out that we may need to have somebody verbally witness. But what we like to do is make sure the survivor on the other line consents to us calling for the police and 911 for medical care. I know that feels like maybe we're delaying things, but what we have heard from survivors is sometimes actually calling the police could really escalate the situation. So we never want a situation where we deploy the police and it actually could make the situation a lot less. So as much as we can, and with removing as much barrier, we will say, hey, things are escalating. Would you like us to call the police? Right? As long as somebody's witnessing that, we can kind of move forward with due diligence to say we've done our best to get confidentiality. The DV4 has also worked a lot with the police, and their recommendation has always been to try to get as much information from the survivor. So that usually means address, are there weapons, what's happening in the home. And so often after we get consent, we want to gather as much as that information. And a lot of that is also feedback from the police they want to stay safe in that interaction as well. So really, we want to follow the survivor's lead, and central to that is really getting their consent. But I'm happy to hear too from other of the panelists to see if like they may differ, or maybe if I miss anything in sort of that in our kind of way we do it at Lutheran.
Yes, it's similar to Lutheran. Congreso follows the same protocols. One thing that we make sure is that we stay on the line with the survivor as much as possible to wait for the police to get there, and also to offer the emotional support that they might need at that time while they're waiting for the police, and also to potentially do some safety planning around other things that might be going on at the moment.
Same thing is true for if we have to call the mental health crisis unit. We also stay on the phone, make sure that we can hear what's going on, and take it as far as we can while we're on the phone with that client.
Thanks. And speaking of safety planning, I'm wondering if you could just elaborate on that a little bit. What does safety planning mean, and what does it look like over the hotline?
So for safety planning is different for each person. There is not a cookie cutter plan. There's not a magic wand that works for everybody. It is very different, and it starts with really listening to what the person is saying and validating what they're saying. Our hotline caller may be the very first person that this survivor has shared their story with. So that's important because that helps you establish and gain trust. And then to work from there. So realize that call may be a snapshot in this person's situation, which could change. But for that moment, what is it that the caller needs to be safe? And based on their situation, is it physical safety that's a concern? But there's also emotional safety. There's financial safety. There's all kind of safety. The safety plan could be, is it safe to call you back? That could be it. That could be all that you get to as a safety plan for that call. Safety plan could be, are there areas of the city of Philadelphia that are unsafe for you? So safety plan could be like a one-liner, or it could be a very detailed safety plan on what to do next. What do you want to do next? How can we support you? But we want to end it where the caller knows that they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing about being safe, feeling safe, is to know that you're not alone and that you have support. But then from that point on, it looks different on every call.
We always encourage folks to reach out to our local domestic violence programs, because we know the situations can change every single moment. So we want to make sure that before the end of the call, they're connected to our ongoing support systems in the city.
And that's why it's important that we talk to the caller. We appreciate you all who are calling to support the caller, but that's why you will hear our hotline counselor say, but I need to talk to the caller. The caller, even though they're going through what they're going through, we use our empowerment model even on the crisis line. And so that means caller is driving the bus in her life. She's driving it. We're not. Regardless of how upset she may be, she is driving the bus, and give her credit for that, because she or he have already figured out ways to be safe, but may not know that was a safety plan, and to help reframe that, so that gives them the energy and the trust and the faith to move on in the next level of their safety plan.
And this requires giving them this space where they can speak privately. So if they're in the office with you and they want to speak with a hotline, make sure that they have a private space, that you step away from that room so that they can share exactly what they want to share with that individual.
Wonderful. I wonder if I see a question, and this is one that we wanted to ask as well. I wonder if we can transition into what more details about what an intake would look like for the safe havens. So the question here is, what's the turnaround? Like, what's the average time frame rather, between an initial call, the complete completion of a safety assessment, and then return call for the intake to then getting into safe haven placement. I wonder if we could speak on that.
I can speak on the safe haven intake, and I would need some support from the others about maybe the time frame. I know that on our end, once a referral comes in, we're required, our hotline counselors are required within 2 hours to reach out to the survivor. And again, it depends on how many referrals may come in. Sometimes there may be quite a few, so we try our best to get to them within that 2-hour time span. As for intake into the safe haven, once the hotline counselors make contact with the survivor and they have established a time that is safe for the survivor to come to the intake location, we will either arrange transportation if the survivor cannot get there safely on their own. If they can, then we give them the address to the location. If they cannot, then we do provide transportation for them to get there. Once they get to us, they have to go through a security check because we want to make sure they're not bringing contraband into the building. Safety is very paramount to our program. After the security check, they are welcomed by the hotline counselor and taken into the space where they will complete their paperwork. And the intake office also, we try to be as trauma-informed as we can. So our intake office has a small play area for children. For older children, we also have books that are available if they would like to read. Once the intake paperwork is completed, there is a very warm hands-off to our client support staff. And those are the staff who are responsible for giving clients a tour of the building and also taking them to their rooms. We also offer meals for clients. We make sure we have meals reserved for incoming clients. So if they get there and they need something to eat, they don't have to sit and be hungry while they wait for maybe lunch or maybe dinner, depending on the time of day. So we always make sure we have plates reserved for our incoming survivors. If clients are not staying at the intake location, then the client support staff, they're also responsible for scheduling for transportation to take them to our second safe haven. And again, the process repeats where the client support staff would give them a tour of that building and take them to their room.
Wonderful, thank you. Want to give pause if there's anything that folks want to add. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you for, I feel like that was such an in-depth look into what the process would look like. I wonder, I see some questions about this as well. What supports are available? And we talked about safety planning, right? But what resources or supports can we provide to folks who may be experiencing other types of abuse, maybe more emotional or something like harassment, stalking? What kinds of support can we offer those survivors of domestic violence?
So we provide, I'm talking about women in transition, we provide individual counseling and group counseling. We also do workshops about financial empowerment. And so there's an array of services that clients, one of the things that I'm gonna go back to safety planning though, is if you're talking to a client and she wants to come to Women in Transition, it's important to know where we're located because that may not be a safe location for that client. And so that resource would not work for that client. We would need to look at our sister programs in order to make sure that client can go to the resource that we provided, but be safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it goes a lot to what Irene mentioned earlier. I think, honestly, our steps for safety planning for whatever type of violence is very similar. I think it begins with just offering like a warm tone, like an accessible, like, hi, how can I support you? And it really has to be client driven. And so a lot of that may be giving a space to give the survivor, allowing them to share information around what's happening. And in that, really listening around what might be the ask or what we call a presenting need, right? And then maybe doing some affirmation to be like, I hear you say this is something you're interested in. And then from there, we become sort of like what we kind of start to triage based on like what the survivor is saying they really need. So it could be, I think this often happens of like, hey, violence is happening in the home. Sometimes people don't want to leave their home, right? They want to figure out how to safety plan when violence is about to erupt. So really what we ask is, what do you think would be most helpful for us to do right now? Like, would you be interested in getting information about leaving, or would you want to talk about ways to stay safe? Right? It might be that we find in that conversation that financial abuse is really central to the violence they're experiencing. So then we think about, could counseling be it? Could some of the work that we're doing around economic justice, like helping to give people access to credit, or maybe curriculum around just like how to save, are those the things that you're asking for? And then we kind of refer out. But I think the sort of act of safety planning is really very similar. It's really listening. It's really asking questions. It's really letting the survivor tell us what they're looking for. And then from there on kind of triaging based on what they're saying.
Wonderful, thank
Also-
you.
And also help and also support with how to navigate these various systems that we may be referring clients to. So it's not just, oh, here they are and here's their address, but it's more about how can we support you as you navigate this system? Because remember, this person's life is not just around being a survivor of domestic violence. They may be interacting with various other systems, and we support them during that process as well.
There was a question asked a few times about how the hotline, I think this is particularly in regards to the the safe haven intake, but I think just generally, how does the hotline handle supporting a survivor who doesn't have a safe callback number? And what are ways we can support that survivor if that's not a possibility for them?
So I normally what we do is make sure that they connect with one of the local agencies. If they can go in person the same day during business hours, we let them know the walking hours, because our local agencies might have resources handy that we can offer. For example, a cell phone for someone to be able to use to call us back or to call the hotline again. We a safety plan, right? We brainstorm ways that they might be able to connect or go to a family or relative's house or friend where they can use their phone, or to a medical center, anywhere where they can, connect and have access to a phone. The advocate will do that thorough assessment to ensure that they can plan, ways to connect back with us. But one of the resources is going back to the local domestic violence hotline to see what resources or tangibles they have access to at the moment.
Okay, I could also add that Women Against Abuse has a staff who is stationed at the Appletree. That's the family intake center that's operated by the Office of Housing Supports. So that's also another resource for clients who do not have their own phone. They can go there, connect with our staff, and our staff will help them to get in contact with someone in the hotline.
Thank you for clarifying that and providing that information. I do see the time, so I wonder, maybe one last question. Do you have any guidance for either survivors or professionals who are looking to get support on the hotline or looking to support a survivor, but are maybe worried about calling for the first time, or kind of facing that barrier that we know some folks may reach when reaching out for help? So is there any words of wisdom or advice that you would give to folks who need support but are maybe a little more apprehensive to call?
I can say that calling the hotline just to here, get the experience to ask the questions as a professional that you might have, or in case you have a case where you need to either give the hotline number to someone or call with a survivor. I think that interaction with the hotline team might help them feel more comfortable with that experience, letting someone else, hey, this is a call, I call them, you know, this was my experience. And I think this is a good resource for you. Not sure what others might feel.
Yeah. So we're welcoming them to the first step in their journey. So this may mean several calls. There's a lot ahead, but this is the first step. We want to validate that and make sure that we're thanking the caller for sharing with somebody they don't even know, for sharing that information, so that we're there shoulder to shoulder with them to be able to provide the support that they need.
Alrighty. Yeah, because we know that it can be really difficult to reach out for help for the first time, or even reach out if you're looking to support a patient or a client, or even just a survivor in your life. So I thought that was a pretty valuable question to ask. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the time. We're at 1:58 right now.
So maybe
mhm.
the way we could land this plane is by hearing from you again. Want to know, after hearing some of these voices and this information, the same question that we asked at the outset, which is, what comes to mind for you? How do you feel about calling the hotline? And again, I'm going to invite you to use that QR code on your screen, or use the go to menti.com and type in the code, and just give it a couple moments here. We want to hear from you. How do you feel now about calling the hotline? I'm seeing here confident, reassured, optimistic, encouraged, still uncertain, better prepared, reassured, community of providers. Yeah, I like that the word community has come up twice. Better now, still uncertain, absolutely. Assured. Great. Feel free to continue adding to this. I love seeing that confident and encouraged are two of the most submitted sentiments. And with that, is there for my friends at ODVS, is there anything that you want to share before we hop off?
Hi, Scott. This is Azucena Ugarte, the Director of the Office of Domestic Violence Strategies. I just want to say thank you so much for coming to the panel. Thank you, Liz, for organizing also the panel. And Liz put on the chat, there were so many questions that were not, we didn't have time to answer. So she's going to do an FAQ document that we can share with everybody who sign up for this webinar. We had over 100 people register, which tell us how much the communities want to know about the Philadelphia Domestic Violence Hotline. So thank you so much for doing this. Liz.